Is this stat accurate? This comes from 952 guy, who I think offers it up as proof of just how valuable Kevin O'Connell was to the Los Angeles Rams Super Bowl operation. Since the Rams won the big game, they are a collective 17-24.
That would check out. That would make sense.
So we're saying KOC has been the missing link, the glue.
What's happened
that
since?
has left the Rams unraveled ever since.
They may have lost a few other pieces, including, I think, a pretty important offensive lineman after that Super Bowl. But he was part of it. He was part of that offense.
Interesting.
It's something to think about.
Yeah. Nice little matchup tonight. Russo Radio is scheduled for the bottom of the hour. We're out at 5 for Vikings Football Sunday, Thursday night edition. Kickoff scheduled for sometime around 7:15. Sean Salisbury will join us tomorrow to assess whatever has taken place or will have taken place tonight, in addition to Ben Gessling, fresh off the plane, I'm assuming, back from Los Angeles. Lavelle, in a recuperating, perhaps also wounded, Lavelle E. Neal III tomorrow, and clearly no pick segment because we did it today. But right now, how about an actual Thursday with the actual inbox?
It's time for Dr. Dan's Inbox.
Letters. Oh, we get letters.
Sponsor?
We get your letters.
No sponsor. Every Thursday right around 4:30, unless we're at the XL Energy Center, River Center for the Green Carpet event, or unless we're out at 5 and Russo needed to go at 4:30, then we bump it up a half an hour. And we don't have a ton of time to get to letters. We have a good sample here, but I'm always accepting them, even to the end of the segment. We've got 7, 8, 9 minutes here. JG at KFAN.com. Dear Dr. Dan, it's been well chronicled that I love C. Finch, and C. Finch loves me. We spent a year together in New Orleans that I've described as the best of my career. Some may describe it as magical. Two things that I have not yet mentioned and probably should have. When C. Finch was in the Bayou, he was technically our offensive coordinator. He didn't really talk to me much about defense or rebounding. We had a guy named A. Davis that handled that side of the floor for us at that time. Imagine my surprise now that C. Finch has turned into a B. Flores type of head coach and is asking me, requiring me to defend guys like L. James. That's not what I thought I was signing up for. We still have our place in New York, Dr. Dan. Is it too late to go back? That from Jay Randall.
That's pretty expertly played. Dr. Dan must admit. Well, it seems like a lot off of a single game. But that letter writer apparently had some of the same difficulties that we did with the Wolves season opener on national television. I am well aware that a year ago we semi-laid an egg in our opener on the road against Toronto. We then followed that up by destroying Miami. And then we had a game in Atlanta where we just stunk. I think we gave up like 162 points.
Yeah.
And played no defense whatsoever.
Yep.
And then what did we do?
Trae Young had like 50 in the third quarter. Remember that?
And then after that, we didn't lose for a month. So we get that the season's not over on the basis of what the Wolves did in the opener. But I sure would like to see Jay Randall give us a little bit stronger impression that he's here to win and that he is here to do the things necessary on both ends of the court to be successful. And by the way, I don't think anybody expected him to be a shutdown defender, right? Cat was not a shutdown defender, but Cat became a more willing defender in this last season, and that's part of the reason the team had the success it did. So Dr. Dan will have just the I think, modest request as laid out in that letter. Just give us an improving, engaged defender, even if one-on-one you're not going to be able to shut a lot of people down. I don't think anybody's going to ask any more of Jay Randall than that, but that should not be too much to ask.
It's time for Dr. Dan's Inbox.
Letters. Oh, we get letters. We get your letters every day.
Dear Dr. Dan, I haven't seen this much attention paid to what is on a dress since my time in the national spotlight 27 years ago. I'm sure P. Kessler could recount very well the days spent discussing my dress and what may have been featured on it. It's hard enough being the center of attention during controversy, but when our clothing is called into question, it can be a very trying time as a woman. I hope C. Engelbert will reach out if she needs someone to talk to. I promise I will not record our calls like L. Tripp. That from M. Lewinsky.
Well, it is. Dr. Dan has thought about this a couple of times, that ordinarily in 2024, any exploration of what any famous or, relatively well-known, decorated woman is wearing is about the most dangerous thing that any male could possibly do. But it appears in this case that there's been an acceptance of ripping this particular outfit by this particular WNBA commissioner because of the message it seemed to convey that for those who wanted to believe conspiracy theory, that it was all, that the wheels were greased for the liberty to knock us off, our Lynx Club off. It certainly was a tone-deaf look to come prepared for Game 5 for the trophy ceremony wearing a New York smock. I don't know that it was a smock, but I just like saying smock. This is the one. It's rare. And there were women chuckling about it. Ordinarily, they ain't going to be chuckling about it when it comes to dress, right?
No.
It's automatic, like, no. You wouldn't even be talking about this if you were a man. But I think because in this case, it seemed to suggest, shall we say, a certain lack of objectivity for the person who's supposed to represent the entire league and every team in the league, not just the New York Liberty. There was an acceptance and a willingness for the cheap shot. I threw out another one today about the pep rally.
Yeah.
That she might have been wearing a Greenwich Village sweatshirt. Well, actually, I didn't use that one. That was my next joke. Fully expecting some blowback, and so far, so good.
And I don't think she's addressed it at all, no pun intended.
Is that right?
You think she should have said something?
Yeah, but has anybody asked her?
Well, it's a good question.
That's the other thing. In this league, the tough questions are, let's be honest, they're just not always asked. There's a fear about asking the tough question.
Well, I can't wait till she comes next season because she always makes a trip.
Do we need to split this up and pause? To stay on schedule?
Let's do it if you want to extend it.
Yeah, unless you don't think you have enough.
Let's challenge the listeners. I have a couple good ones, but let's see if somebody can come up with a couple more on the fly.
Yeah, and we certainly can get into some other things on the other end of it, too. JG at KFAN.com. Still time to get into Dr. Dan's inbox, that segment, and then Russo Radio to talk puck at the bottom of the hour.
Join Nordo from 9 to noon this Saturday at the AT&T store in West St. Paul. You can drop in from noon to 2 for your chance to win some KFAN stuff. We call them swag packs in the business. Every 15 minutes. Get the full details at KFAN.com. Keyword calendar. Go see Nordo Saturday, AT&T store in West St. Paul.
Nordo 9 to noon. There's a lot of great alliteration there, isn't there?
There is.
So that's this Saturday.
9 to noon, or noon to 2.
Man, I thought it was 9 to noon.
He's from 9 to noon.
Oh,
noon to 2 is Saturday.
That's the bit. The bit's actually noon to 2. I see. So noontime nuggets, so to speak. That's a callback to when Jesse Ventura was a member of the fan stable. You know, another guy did nothing but bits. And one of the bits he did was called Noontime Nuggets. Speaking of alliteration, are you old enough to remember Noontime Nuggets?
I don't remember Noontime Nuggets.
Are you kidding me? They were huge.
I was always in school. I think I was still in school at that point.
You were supposed to be in school. My recollection is you occasionally slipped away.
Not around lunchtime. Lunch was a great time to be in school. Yeah, I never missed lunch.
We got a couple more items for Dr. Dan's inbox before we get to Russo Radio and perhaps a final couple of thoughts about Vikings-Rams. Is that correct?
It's time for Dr. Dan's
Yeah, we've got troves now.
What do you make of this?
We get letters.
Tom and Egan. You might want to confirm that Lavelle Neal III hasn't defected. I heard him with Kathy Wurzer on NPR on Monday. What is? Does he have any sense of loyalty at all? Obviously, the answer is no. Where does it end with him?
He'll have to take that up with Allery's Bar, your home for free parking and wild shuttles that brings us Lavelle Neal III every week.
Remarkable.
Yeah.
But anyway, I digress.
Dear Dr. Dan, could you please talk to D. Barrero and tell him, stay away. We don't need you. He keeps talking about coming to a game, May I remind you what he reminded G. Mason of? When he was a student here, the football team was awful under El Corso. The second he steps on campus, he's going to jinx us. Sincerely, C. Signetti and the I Hoosier football team.
Yeah, well, there may be some truth to that. They may say, we don't want that guy. Who the hell is he? They don't remember me at IU. Are you kidding me? The IU School of Journalism doesn't even acknowledge my existence, for God. Bozich a little more than me, but not much. We've kidded about that early and often. I think I'm better off keeping my distance and watching this thing from afar, and I don't want to in any way feel like I'm disrupting it. I will admit this. Saturday, as they are putting the finishing touches on absolutely humiliating Tom Osborne's Nebraska Cornhuskers.
The latest masterpiece.
Correct. I ordered an Indiana University football black hoodie with dark red lettering. It hasn't arrived yet, though. It said 4 to 10 business days. I was still hoping I'm not going to have to wait the full 10, but I am trying to get involved. I am trying to enjoy the moment because Lord knows if you're a Hoosier football fan, you have no idea how long it might possibly last.
It's time for Dr. Dan's Inbox.
Bozich and I used to live next door, Stadium Village Apartments, right next door to Memorial Stadium one summer.
Are they still there?
No, they're actually not.
Oh, really?
I think they got torn down for either a parking lot or Joni Mitchell or something else. I'm not exactly sure, but I don't think they exist
That's too bad.
anymore.
You guys could go and do the knock on the door
They
bit.
were nice. It was a nice apartment. 2 bedrooms. We each had our own bedroom. Each had our own bathroom.
You have
nice
the
and
means.
spacious. Right next to the stadium.
Dear Dr. Dear Dr.
And
Dan.
Assembly Hall.
Well, I would say Assembly Hall more apt for you guys. 'Cause that'd be...
It was a lot of fun for the 4 of us, if you know what I mean.
Okay, Mace. I didn't need that. I got to talk now. No.
I didn't think you did. Sorry. Now you're off your game.
Dear Dr. Dan, why don't you go to karaoke night with that attitude? I feel like we become pen pals with all my letters you've read this year. It's been a while, a couple of weeks actually. Just want to check in and get your thoughts on the World Series from one ball guy to another. Sincerely, Jay Polad.
I'll admit, now, does the series start tonight? I think it's tonight.
Is it tonight? I thought it was tomorrow.
Maybe it is. You might. That's how disconnected Dr. Dan is.
I have no idea.
Now that the Twins are not a factor in any of this, but somebody put it together. I might save it for early next week.
Tomorrow night.
Somebody tried to put together an all-time Dodgers team and an all-time Yankees team, and it is obscene.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
This is cool.
How deep. And I'm not bothered by the fact that they obviously have combined a $700 million payroll. Their histories do indeed speak for themselves. Also, I retweeted, if you followed me on Twitter, a link to our guy Kevin Kernan's great piece, ode to Fernando Valenzuela, and ode to what was then called, we talked about this yesterday without maybe naming it, it was Fernando Mania, is what it was called at the time when he emerged. First year, dominant player, World Series, great pitcher. And he reminds us, screwball was his best pitch. The other thing that was fascinating about Fernando is when he went into his windup, and there were still shots that showed this, his eyes always went up to the heavens. You could see it. He's looking straight up before then he turns towards the plate and delivers the pitch. That was sort of the signature Valenzuela look.
It's time for Dr. Dan's Inbox.
Oh, we get letters.
Do you know what the 67 Indiana Hoosiers, the last team to... They shared the Big Ten title with the Gophers and the third team.
Yep.
But they got to go to the Rose Bowl to play USC and OJ because it had been the longest since they'd been.
Was Purdue the third team?
I don't remember the third team.
I feel like the Gophers lost week of. I've talked to Bob Stein about this, that they,
that could have been.
something happened the last week of the season where the Gophers were in clear position to win the Big Ten, and they ended up tying
That might
with
be right.
Indiana.
That might be
But
right.
I can't remember.
They were called the Cardiac Kids.
That's right.
Because they came from behind a number of times in dramatic fashion. There ain't no cardiac kids in these Hoosiers because they're dominating everybody.
Heart rate is chill.
Yeah, apparently.
Very stable.
Don't rule out they're going to Columbus and knocking off the Buckeyes.
I rule
That's all I'm
nothing
gonna
out.
say. That's all I'm going to say at this point.
Dear Dr. Dan, as excited as I am to be backstopping one of the few remaining unbeaten in regulation teams in hockey, I am a little worried the team is relying on me too much for my goal-scoring prowess. I currently have more goals than 12 of our skaters, including B. Faber, M. Felino, and Jay Brodeen. It's hard enough parking the bus in front of the net every night and stopping the puck, hoping to keep up the good run to start the season, even though he's not starting tonight. F. Gustafson.
I think it's Flower tonight, isn't it?
It is.
Which is going to make it very interesting because Louis, I think, is already hinting at a little bit of concern about what he's got at this point. We'll discuss that, I'm sure, with Russo on the other side of the bottom of the hour. And we'll get into that question of depth, scoring depth, that if you want to be a nitpicker about what's happened thus far, that would probably be it, right? At what point do we get more from lines 3 and 4 when it comes to scoring? I'm not going to biatch about it too much at this point because it's been a very encouraging start. But as El Nanny says, and as the writer of that particular letter suggests as well, it's basically been about the Gus bus. Front, center, and back. Further evidence that there is no more influential position in any sport than goaltender in hockey.
It's time for
Last one here. I still have to do the cash keyword. I didn't do it for the 4 o'clock hour.
I didn't give you much of a chance to.
That's all right.
Letters every day.
Dear Dr. Dan, are winters in Minneapolis really worse than winters in Detroit? I recall a ridiculously big storm in a suburb called Apple Valley just a few years ago. M. Stafford.
Yeah, there was one. Remember that one where, was it like 17 inches of snow there? And then the rest of the metro got like 3 or something?
It was something like that. I think it was actually like 4 in Apple Valley.
Well,
and the
yeah.
rest of we were supposed to get 22.
Yeah.
It's still the greatest
Yes.
Fox 9 Chiron, I think they call it.
Yes.
Where they superimpose it.
Yeah, and
Apple Valley digs out.
Apple Valley digs out, and there were like days of stories. And then we might have had some fun with it from that point forward. Speaking of Fox 9, No Enough said this week. Is that correct?
Because of the
We've been
World
preempted?
Series. Yeah.
That's weak.
Which starts tomorrow. It's
Well,
Friday and
what's the difference?
Saturday.
There's football each week, Friday too. Why is this different?
I think the football is getting kicked to the auxiliary channel.
Oh, I see.
I think.
Okay.
I don't know exactly how it's going, but
I don't think we're completely dead though, because did you see the email we got or text from Lori that we're going to be able to pose for our own holiday card?
I did see that.
I assume that means we're not on the verge of being canceled. Not quite yet.
Until the cards go out,
And then,
at
but
least.
we got to wear something holiday Christmas
I
jingle.
know, there's
jangle
always an
related.
asterisk that we don't like.
For sure.
Like the dance-off when I had to do Good Day. The Fan and 2 men and a junk truck want to give you a shot to put $1,000 in your hand with our national cash contest. Final keyword of the evening, because we're out in 30 minutes, is deposit. Go to KFAN. No, today's Thursday. It's cash. Go to KFAN. At least I remembered.
Yeah.
It's KFAN.com, and the keyword is cash.
All right, so here's the plan. Vikings Football Sunday, Thursday night edition, will take over at the top of the 5 o'clock hour. When we come back, we're going to chat a little hockey with Russo Radio. Probably a few final thoughts on Vikings Rams for the evening as well. Sean Salisbury among our guests reacting to Thursday Night Football on tomorrow's show.
Time now for the Vikings Report on The Fan, presented by Miller Lite. Vikings safety Cam Bynum joins Barrero next after this from Miller Lite. Fan.
Final segment of the show wrap, no matter when it is always brought to you by American Pressure, commercial-grade pressure washer since 1975.
You're hearing the music early because we were out at 5 o'clock for Gopher football. Vikings Football Sunday, Thursday night edition. Vikings and Rams tonight. All the action coming up on the flagship, FM 100.3, The Fan. There are other sports that have started their seasons, and that includes the Wild and the National Hockey League season. Russo Radio kind enough to join us via the Connecticut Water Systems hotline. If I asked you to give me the top 5 reasons the Wild are off to this nice, promising start, if it being still very early in the season, would the goaltender be 1, 2, and 3, or just one, and do you have 4 others? What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think definitely 1, maybe 1 and 2. I mean, he's gotten off to an incredible start, and I'm really happy for him because right when I saw him in training camp, he just looked like a different guy than last year. I mean, there's no doubt that he came back trimmed compared to last season, not that he was like overweight or anything last year, but there's no doubt that the Wild, both Bill Guerin and John Hines, really impressed upon him this offseason. That he had to do a much better job with his fitness and work habits and practice, and he did everything they wanted him to do, and he came back into camp, and he just looks awesome right now. But I will say, the Wild defensively right now, Dan, have been really outstanding. I mean, he has to make 2 or 3 great A's a game, and other than the Winnipeg game, hasn't had to steal anything, and he stole them a point that night on a night where they worked hard but didn't obviously have their legs after playing the night before, and he's just been really, really good. And the other big reason why they've gotten off to this great start is Kaprizov, Zuccarello, and Rossi have been just fabulous, and their power play has been good, but that line has just been great. Kaprizov and Zuccarello look like they did during the early years under Dean, and man, they've just really gotten off to a great start. And you just know at some point the floodgates are going to open for Kaprizov to just fill the net.
Where do you factor in? I don't have the stats in front of me. I was trying to get them here on the fly for penalties, because I know last game I don't think we committed any, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of discussion about that being an issue. Obviously, especially if you don't have a good penalty kill, how lethal that was to the team last year. So is this just chance, or do you think this does reflect an emphasis of the coaching staff to say we can't keep taking stupid penalties?
Yeah, I mean, they don't even have a major yet, which is shocking for a team that has a lot of these, the Folignos and the Trennans and the Middletons and the Bogosians and Lauko and people that could drop the glove. But they've only taken 6 minor penalties, have been shorthanded only 12 times. That's third fewest in the league. And it has been an emphasis from John Hines. I mean, before he got hurt, Ryan Hartman had 0 penalty minutes this year and had drawn 4. So it just feels like that has been a big thing. I mean, again, it's an early sample size. They've had a really favorable schedule here, but then they, for the naysayers and skeptics, that just felt like, all right, they beat a pretty crummy Columbus team a couple times, and really hadn't proven anything yet against a real proven team. They go into Florida and really just played a real sound, responsible game where they didn't take penalties, defended impeccably, and got great goaltending, and really just put. And the other thing that game that I think is a real, reason to have optimism if they continue to stay healthy is that third line with Foligno and Trennan and Huzadinov. It's the best that we've seen. Huzadinov's been good, but he's been elevated with Hartman out. But Foligno and Trennan have had a real quiet start to their season. But defensively that night, Florida, who has a ton of juggernauts on their team, even with Sasha Barkov hurt, really could do nothing against that Foligno and Trennan duo with Huzantinov in the middle. So, right now they're getting great balance. We'll see what's going to happen tonight. Tampa, they haven't gotten great goaltending from Vasilevsky, and obviously Fleury's in net tonight, so that might change the complexion a little bit. And we'll see how they do tonight. But so far, so good.
It's hard to argue with where they are at this very early stage. It's funny because I mentioned this to Louis, I think, on yesterday's show. I heard Hines on with PA. It also might have been yesterday. And there was discussion about the intensity of training camp. And I really love the coach's answer because he said, I wouldn't call it an intense training camp. I would call it we had training camp. His point being that should be the norm. Whatever we thought of it previously, that all he was conducting, he thought, was training camp. It wasn't like he thought he was going out of his way to make it tougher, but that there is value to every year, in his view, clearly, to have a training camp in which you're dedicating it to a lot of, intensity and trying to sort of set certain things as being the norm.
Yeah, I mean, I thought he did a tremendous job. And obviously, look, and I'm not saying at all that Dean and Bruce Boudreau and Mike Yeo and Todd Richards and all the coaches before didn't run hard training camps. But this one was just so glaring. And maybe it's just because it was the first training camp that we've seen under John Hines, and you have two former head coaches, or one head coach and a former head coach on the ice, and Jack Capuano. And it just felt like that right now they are being really well coached. I thought everything was super organized. They had a mission with every single day. the thing that also that I was talking to Jake Middleton and a couple other players about is that there were no rests in camp. It literally was drill, water break, drill. There was no stopping. It was just an hour and a half every day of working hard. But then he gave them 3 or 4, full days off where, they had recovery days. And I think that's actually what happened in that Winnipeg game is that they almost were used to, having those little days after working hard. So I think the Seattle game took a lot out of them when that game turned upside down and they had to really scramble to try to win that game and eventually, ultimately did. But it just wasn't, what you'd want on a front end of a back-to-back. So I thought John really worked the areas that this team has struggled in before. Freddie Shabbat worked really hard with the 3 goaltenders and especially Philip Gustafson. But the penalty kill was a huge emphasis in camp. It was just constantly beating it into them and coming up with routes and just really, again, organized. And so, you never know after a hard training camp how it's going to start the season. But again, so far, so good. It just feels like a lot of the things that hurt them last year have been so far improved 6 games in. And, as I told you, before the season started, I looked at last year as obviously being an unbelievable disappointment. But to me, it was so obvious what happened. That they had major injuries that they weren't equipped to really recover from, and they got terrible goaltending for most of the year from both Gustafson and Fleury. And if you improve those 2 things, I think this team is better equipped to make the playoffs. And I think that last year, if those 2 things don't happen, they are a playoff team. I just don't think a team with Kirill Kaprizov being healthy is a team that's going to miss the playoffs. He'll will you right there. So now if you fix the other things, everything else should go well. And right now, they've had injuries to Spurgeon. They've had injuries to Hartman, Eriksson, Johansson. Hasn't been major things, but they've got guys out of the lineup, yet they're figuring out ways to get points in these games.
What do we expect from Flowers in net tonight, correct?
Yep.
What do we expect?
Yeah. Obviously, I get why Wild fans were dismayed by this news today. I've been warning them for a week that Fleury was going to get this game because they want to give him a game before he plays in Pittsburgh for the final time next week and not have him basically go a month without playing. But I get why Wild fans are upset with this because, you want to ride the hot goalie. And Gus has been outstanding. So, I think that Flowers is going to come in here like he always does tonight and compete against a really good Tampa Bay team that could score a ton of goals. They put up 8 the other night on a second back-to-back against Jersey. And so we'll see. I mean, this could be the game, though, that they, we'll have to see if they could actually play from behind, because that has been a big point of emphasis this morning by John Cooper, pointing out over and over again to his team that the Wild are 6 games into the season and yet have not had a deficit at all. That's the second longest streak in NHL history at 360 minutes. So tonight might be a night that we'll have to see if the Wild get a different ingredient, but they've done an incredible job scoring first in all 6 games. And man, tonight they're going to have to protect Flower.
What is the story behind the story on Spurgeon?
The story, I think it's very clear that what Bill Guerin said the other day is exactly true. I think this is part of the healing process of a guy that had multiple surgeries at the end of the year. I don't even think it's his age, his size, like a lot of people have said. I think he had both back and hip surgery, and he woke up in Winnipeg not feeling great, and the trainers decided to err on the side of caution and fly him back to the Twin Cities and get examined. And just the fact that he was examined and then they just told him, let things calm down and get back on the ice. I think that shows you that they examined him and found no setbacks here. So things right now are going by the process that Bill Guerin vowed it would the other day. He's been on the ice the last 3 or 4 days. He's flying tonight to Philadelphia. He's going to skate with them tomorrow in New Jersey, on the other side of the bridge there before playing the Flyers at noon. And then he'll go with the team to Pittsburgh. He'll have another practice on Monday and then come home next week, and hopefully they can get him back in the lineup. I really would be shocked if he played against the Flyers or the Penguins, but just the fact that he's continuing his rehab and treatments with the team, I think, is a good sign that they're going to get him back in the lineup pretty quickly here.
Texter, this is looks like 612 guy. Yeah, 612 guy. Russo mentioned Rasmus Andersson is potentially available if Spurgeon's not healthy. Really? Is there steam on this, or does he know that the Wild hold him in high regard? Not saying they're trading for him, but is he their type of guy?
Well, he's my type of guy. I mean, he's an absolute star defenseman, a big right shot, block shots, physical. best quote in the league. So that's another reason why he's my type of guy. I love interviewing him, love sitting down with him. Got to sit down with him for about 20 minutes alone in Stockholm last year. And so part of that is me campaigning. I'm mentioning that today is the reason why I mentioned that today is obviously they're not trading for Rasmus Anderson unless they found out at some point that Spurgeon is done for the year and they can put him on LTI and then afford Rasmus Anderson. The only reason why I mentioned Rasmus Anderson, and he's got another year left on his contract, is, if this was an LTI situation, I would think that would then put, even next season in doubt for Spurgeon, and then the Wild would have that money that they could afford Rasmus. And again, the only reason why I even mentioned him is Elliot Friedman, who I think is the most plugged-in insider, or one of them in the National Hockey League. He has made it extremely clear this year that even though the Calgary Flames have gotten off to this outstanding start, that Craig Conroy still looks at this as a rebuilding situation, and might be, especially if things go turn upside down later in the season, might be willing to move a player like that. So the only reason why I brought him up in the context of me bringing him up was the fact that fans were asking me, well, who can they go after if Spurgeon was put on LTIR? Well, if he was put on LTIR and he was done for the year, that would create $7.5 million that technically Bill Guerin would have the ability to go add this season.
Let's circle back here at the end to Gustafsson.
By the way, thanks for subscribing to that person. Usually you're like, Russo tweeted something. You don't hear somebody actually reading what I wrote.
Yeah, how about that? Yeah, that's very encouraging. Have we already reached the point, or soon will we reach the point that Gustafsson becomes literally untradeable for this team, that he's too valuable to even think about doing what obviously this team deep down wanted to do last season, and I still think thought they might want to do during the season? Has he already reached the point where you say, well, you literally can't trade him?
I don't think he can. I mean, I was shocked this summer that they wanted to trade him. And obviously, I just think that the second they signed Fleury, it just became something where Bill Guerin had in his mind that he wanted a Wallstedt-Fleury tandem this year. And I just don't know at 26 years old, when you've played 2 full seasons, and one was incredible and the other one was lousy, why you wouldn't at least wait and see if maybe the incredible one is more like the real Philip Gustafsson. I mean, this is a 26-year-old. Right now, Wallstedt hasn't proven anything. I mean, not only has he gotten off to a bad start this year in Iowa, but even his numbers in Iowa last year were pretty pedestrian, and so I just don't know what the rush was to make this move. And so I think there's a lot of GMs out there that are right now having goaltending problems that are just sitting there and wondering, why didn't I not bite on this guy?
Yeah.
And I bet you deep down, Bill Guerin's thanking God that they didn't bite on that. Right. I mean, even as I reported right before the season, Patrick Laine was a done deal here, and Gustafsson, I believe, was in that trade. And as Bill Guerin first said on your show, Laine didn't waive his no trade clause to come here. If he does, Gustafsson's length right now, I believe. So the Wild are so far pretty lucky.
Sometimes, the cliche goes, the best trades are the ones that you end up being taken away from you. And you and I talked about this late last season, postseason. You're exactly right that, he was lousy last year, but are you making a mistake not giving him a chance to rebound given the alternatives? I think we both thought the best deal is play this out, see if he can recapture something, and he obviously has thus far. Yeah.
And one thing I will point out, too, is Bill Guerin said this right before the year, is that one reason why he believes the Wild didn't have goaltending last year is because of how the Wild defended, their penalty kill, and also their injuries last year. And let's be honest, they have defended really, really well so far, 6 games into the season. Their penalty kill hasn't gotten a ton of chances, still could be better, but has for the most part been pretty decent. It'll continue to climb up the ranks, I think. And defensively, they've just been so good in their own zone. Brock Faber has had a sensational start to the season. Middleton's been unbelievable the last 3 games. And they're doing this again without Jared Spurgeon in the lineup. It's pretty impressive.
Thanks, Russo Radio. We will chat next week. Appreciate you.
Yep, see ya. Take care.
Russo helping us out as only he can do. A couple final thoughts here before we wrap things up. We always have texters that know more than we do. I mentioned No Enough Said on Fox 9 tomorrow night. A 763 guy reminds us, Friday on Fox 9 at 7, Game 1, Yankees-Dodgers World Series, 10 o'clock, Fox 9, Rutgers at USC. So it's also a late Big Ten football game which makes me feel better that they weren't trying to get rid of us, but that there literally was no room.
You know what I heard about that, too, by the way?
What's that?
That Fox, and this is conspiracy theorist, was forecasting this was going to be a possibility months ago. The New York, L.A. World Series, and then Rutgers, USC back-to-back. And so that's part of the reason why they put this game on a Friday night, the football game.
That is a conspiracy.
They were wondering that they said that might be possible.
It could happen.
What do we know?
252 guy writes, Dan, in the movie Bull Durham, Susan Sarandon was explaining Fernando Valenzuela's eyes to Timothy Robbins. That's a good callback to that motion picture. We were talking about Fernando Mania a little bit earlier, and a great piece that I linked to by our favorite nerd hater, correct? Kevin Kernan.
America's most beloved sports writer.
That's it. Just ask him. Vikings football. It's tonight, Thursday night football. Vikings and Rams. We'll break it all down and react to it tomorrow with Sean Salisbury, Ben Gessling, Lavelle E. Neal III, and plenty of Vikings talking points. Enjoy Vikings Football Sunday, Thursday night edition. Pregame show is next. And as I said, we will chat once again beginning at 3 o'clock right here on The Fan.
Thank you, everybody, for coming here.
The stories a stadium could tell.
Purple pride, purple pride.
Whenever